Thank you very much. I want to start off with thanking the local organizers for inviting me to give this talk. As we just heard, it's the second time I give the talk, but it's the first time in my entire career that I have had to give a talk 2 times. So I guess it must have been good. Now, when I started to write almost 60 years ago, one of my first writing teachers was an American lady who lived in Denmark. And after a couple of years of her attempt at teaching me to write, for various reasons, our roads became separated. And for more than 50 years, we were not in contact with each other. But then after a couple of months before the conference in Delaware, I heard that she was living in Wyoming at a horse ranch. So after I had gone to Delaware, I figured that since I was in the vicinity, I might just go and visit her. And that's what I did. Her name is Ellen Shepherd McKee, and she's sitting right there. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome you to this ISIS conference, now that you have heard so much about it. So I'm very happy for you to be here. Now, Ellen and her husband Bill, who is sitting next to her, and I spent many hours, apart from memorizing the present, going down memory lane 50 years, we spent many hours out in the Wyoming desert, or half desert, and looking for these animals that you see here. That's the wild horses, the Mustangs. That's domestic horses that have escaped into nature, or they've been released into nature. And they're living there without much interference from man. I think that's something very impressive to see, that the horses that we are actually riding on, that they are able to go out there and take care of themselves. Not only take care of themselves, they're able to survive, and they're able to reproduce at such a rate that in other parts of the country, they are actually more a nuisance than something that benefits the area. I know there's a lot of controversy, especially in the States, about what to do with these many Mustangs, and I don't want to get into that discussion. But what really impresses me is how good these animals look. This is a small family band, as they're called. It's a stallion and his 2 mares and their offspring. They are the best proof for me, in my opinion, that the way that many of our horses, domestic horses, riding horses, are kept in small enclosures, isolated from their social fellows, that simply is not the right way of keeping horses. If we want our horses to perform at some top level, or at least at some level, whether it's in dressage or jumping or just leisure riding, and if we want them to be safe and easy to handle, we simply have to consider the way these horses are kept. They have to be kept in such a way that they are in harmony with each other if we want them to stay reasonably calm when we are around them. If we are really serious about animal welfare, I think the only thing we can do in order to improve their welfare, or the best thing we can do, that is to change from this individual housing over to a loose housing, some kind of loose housing system. There's one thing I've never understood. Now, for many years, we behavior biologists have worked very hard at changing the housing system for cattle, pigs, and hens. And because they are just like the horses, they are social animals. And to be a social animal, it means you need to be together with your conspecifics. Now, as far as pigs are concerned, sows, we had to get legislation to help us to get them out of the tether stores and into the group housing system. Otherwise, the farmers would not listen to us. For dairy cows, the story is very different. because milk farmers, they did the change pretty much by themselves. They went from the tether housing into the group housing. It looks like these cows are tethered. They're not. They're just lying freely in their lying areas. The reason why the dairy farmers did that by themselves is that cows have a wonderful way of showing how they feel. They give more milk when they feel good. Now that's welfare that you can measure with a scale. So there we didn't need legislation. Egg-laying hens, we also needed legislation to change their housing system. Now they were always in group housing systems, but in very small areas. So at least now they have to be in a little bit bigger areas. But what I've never been able to understand is why aren't we keeping horses that are just as much social animals as these other species? Why don't we house them in groups? And that's what I'm going to talk about. First, I'll show you some examples of the natural environment of horses, and then I'll show you the result of a few studies that have looked at how we house riding horses. And after that, I'll show you a few of the problems connected with that kind of housing system. And finally, I will give you some suggestions for alternative ways of housing horses. One of my colleagues, Janne Winter Christensen, who some of you may know, she did a study many years ago in this area of Ukraine, Askania Nova. It's a big nature reservation where they have the largest herd of Przewalski horses. And what she did was she studied the social behavior, certain aspects of social behavior in Przewalski horses. Now, Przewalski horses are the truly wild horse. It's not never been domesticated. It's not a domestic animal. It is a truly wild horse. If you look at the area that this group of young stallions is going in, that's the natural type of landscape in this part of the world. What you see in the background there in the horizon, that's man-made. That's trees and plants and bushes and whatever. These animals have, for thousands of generations, evolved to live in this very open landscape, eating the grass and plants that are living there, fully exposed to predators, exposed to rain and storm and winter and summer and etc. In this area, the summers get up to 40 degrees Celsius and the winters down to minus 40 degrees Celsius with lots of snow, and yet they are able to survive in this environment. That's what horses have evolved to live, the conditions they have evolved to live under. You can see there's a lot of flies. This film is taken in the month of May, and there's a lot of insects, and that's why they keep so close together to get the help from the neighbors' tails. Now remember, these are all intact stallions, and look how relatively peaceful they are going. This is the same stallions in a different area, showing some of the behavior that Janne studied. This is play behavior, and she also did the same kind of study on domestic warm blood young stallions. And what she found was something that we have also seen in many other species, that the behavior pattern of our domestic horses is almost identical to the behavior pattern of these wild horses. There may be a few differences in degree, in intensity, like these stallions. They fight, they play much more intensely. They also fight much more intensely than domestic horses. But the basic behavior pattern is the same, and that's something we've seen in pigs and cattle and chickens and most other animals that we have studied. Another example are the conic horses. in an area, nature area in Holland. Now the Konig horse is not a truly wild horse. It's actually a feral horse. Many years ago there were some biologists that tried to recreate the other kind of wild horse that managed to die out, the tarpan, and they came up with this kind of a horse. Whether the tarpans really look like that, nobody knows. But okay, let's believe that they did. Now, they also live in a big open area, but in contrast to other horses, the interesting thing about this breed of horse is that their social organization is quite different. As you can see, they live much closer together than what you would see in other kinds of horses. It looks like they belong to one big group. That's how close together they can be. But in reality, when you really notice the individual horses, you will see that they establish subgroups within this big multi-band, as it's called. And these horses, remember, half of them, they're intact stallions. They're kept completely without the influence of man. Only if one of the horses gets sick or something, then it'll get shot. It'll get killed right then and there. Man comes in and plays predator. But other than that, nothing is done. They never go to the vet. They don't have their hooves taken care of, etc., etc. The most impressive picture you get when you watch these horses is that even though half of the horses are stallions and live fairly close together, it's amazing how peaceful it is. There is some degree of, sometimes stallions get into a fight, but that's relatively rare. Now, what the horses do is there's a bunch of stallions, approximately 10 stallions, standing around a group of mares, approximately the same amount, and that's the subgroup. That's just, a little herd within the herd, and of course the offspring. And they keep pretty much together and separate from the others, but as you can see, very close to the other subgroups. This red fellow here is a little bit different from the other. I don't know what he did. But he's one of the stallions in one of the subgroups. Now, we don't know if which of the stallions surrounding these mares are doing the breeding. Probably it's one of the stallions that does most of the breeding of the subgroup mares, and the others only have to, I guess, watch or something. Again, another family band of the wild Mustangs, or the wild horses or the Mustangs that we have been watching in Wyoming. Again, you see they stay in this open area. There's no bushes, no trees. They live off, I don't know what they live off, but they find something to eat here. This is again a small family band. Here's the stallion and his 4, maybe 5 mares, or 4 mares and a younger offspring. Now, these horses, if they move down that way a couple of miles, maybe 4 or 5 miles, they would gradually come down to a valley, and in the bottom of that there is a small river or brook there's green grass growing on the side in this valley, and probably they do go down there once every 24 hours or once every 48 hours to get water and to eat some of the grass. But then when after some time they still come back up here on the hillsides here and spend most of the time up here. Why do they choose that environment? Why don't they stay down where there's water and green grass? Why do they prefer to come up here? Well, we don't know all the questions, but it must be better for them. Maybe it's only because they can keep they can look at the surroundings to see if there are any predators coming. If any of you are interested in wild horses, then I can highly recommend this book written by Joe Berger, The Wild Horses of the Great Basin. Joe Berger spent about 3 summers in the Great Basin. That's a very enclosed area, somewhere in Nevada, I think it is, where he spent a lot of time observing these wild Mustangs to the degree that he really could recognize them individually. And he studied them very, very in great detail. And in his book, he provides a lot of really interesting data on how these horses live, how they reproduce, and how they actually how they develop, how the foals develop, and to be able to survive in this land. So that's a book I can recommend. Even in Little Denmark, we have wild horses, feral horses. This is a group of Exmoor ponies. For more than 50 years ago, there was some Exmoor ponies that were brought from Great Britain over to Denmark, to a small island in Denmark, and they were just left there pretty much. Nobody interfered with what they were doing, and they multiplied and did extremely well. Now there are so many of them that we've had to take some of them away from this little island and put them in other parts of Denmark, and they're used to keep the vegetation low and keep to eat the new trees that may come, so that we can keep the landscape in the shape it's in. They are wild ponies, except, and you're not allowed to approach them more than 20 meters. Well, I don't think they read that sign, the ponies, because one time I was over there watching them, and I was sitting in the grass just watching how they were grazing, and they were gradually grazing closer and closer, so they came up to only this is taken without tele, so they're only about a couple of meters away from me. Very peaceful animals, and again, stallions intact. They don't have shoes. If they get sick, they get killed. Other than that, and there's no extra feeding in the winter, even though once in a while there's snow in Denmark. But they really thrive under these conditions. So, if the horses have the chance, that's the kind of environments they will choose, and that's why I say putting them in a small cage, dark cage, separated from the conspecifics. Well, somebody said that's the housing system for a carnivore, not for a horse. Let me then show the results of a few of the investigations that have been made on how we usually house our horses. These are the results from a 13-year-old study done in Switzerland involving these 2,500 horses. And what they found was that over 80% of the horses were kept in individual houses. And of all these horses, only about 1/3 of them came out on pasture every day. Now, of course, this number, it depends on whether you measure in the summer or in the winter, but it's pretty much average over the whole year. And that result is pretty representative of how horses, at least in Europe, and I think also in Northern America, how they are kept. A couple of Danish vet students, they looked at this number of Danish horses in 12 riding schools, and they were all kept in individual housing, but at least most of them, they got out on pasture at least once in a while. 10% of them never got out. 15% got out 1 to 3 times a week. And of the remaining 75%, that's the amount of time that they were out as you can see here. And only 1.4% of these riding school horses, they were out in day and night. They had possibility of being out day and night. Being vet students, they also looked at whether they had lesions, because as I'll show you later, one of the main arguments that horse owners have for not letting their horse out is that they're afraid that the horses are going to get hurt. But what they found was that there were no more lesions in the horses that came out on pasture than on the horses that did not come out. These two results I'll come back to later. A few years ago, we did a major study in the Nordic countries. The Nordic countries, for those of you who don't know, that's Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Iceland. One of the things we did was we looked at how these horses were housed. Now, the result we found was that almost half of the horses that we got answers from our questionnaire, that they were kept permanently in groups outdoors all throughout day and night. Now if that's true, then you can see there's really been progress in this area, at least in the Nordic countries. But you have to remember that a lot of the horses that were included in this investigation, they were Icelandic horses, and for some reason Icelandic horse owners, they are much more prone to let their horses out in groups on pasture day and night than the owners of other kinds of horses. So it's not representative for all the horses in the Nordic countries. And yet there still was half that were kept inside in individual boxes. I think the most shocking result here is that still over 1/3 of the stallions, they were kept in individual box stores. Some of them were also allowed to get out, but only alone in a field. And I think the most alarming result is that half of all the competition horses, they were always alone. They may come out on pasture a few hours a day from their individual box store, but they're always alone. In this investigation, we also asked horse owners why they didn't want to let their horses out in groups. And the most frequent result that we got was that people, almost half of the people, they were afraid that the horse would get kicked or otherwise damaged when it was together with other horses. That's a very frequent argument that you hear. 40%, they were afraid that it should happen if new horses got into the group. And another quite frequent argument is that, well, we can't feed our horse the way we want to feed it, or there's aggression around the food trough when we feed them. These last two categories of arguments against group housing, I think are very, very important, and we need to realize that this can be an issue. People were simply afraid of their own safety, or they had problems with handling their horse if they had to go into a social group or a group of horses and get their own horse out in order to ride it or whatever. And that's something that I think we need to really work on to at least get that fear away from people. But these the number of investigations that we have, the information we have of how horses are housed or kept, the housing system that we use for horses, that is very sparse. So we really need more information on how people all over the world, how they house their horses. Why is it a problem to keep horses in individual housing? Well, this is a list of some of the major reasons. And the most important is really that they have no possibility for social contact. Horses are social animals. This is about the third time I tell you that today, but it's really true. And that means that they need to be together with other horses so they can perform some very important, so they can get a lot of several very important demands fulfilled. And one of them is that they need to be in physical contact with each other. They need to be able to touch each other. Maybe they don't do it, but they have to have the possibility to do it. Seeing a horse in a neighbor box stall, hearing other horses or smelling them, that's simply not enough. We have seen that in several of our investigations. Are horses willing to work to get access to other horses? Well, yes. Let me tell you a little bit about that. You saw, those of you who followed the conference, you heard yesterday of a method how you can train cows to push weight in order to get outside or something like that. Well, we have a little bit more elegant method of doing the same kind of measurements, and it's based on economics. Now, economists know that if for some goods the consumer buys just as much of it independent of the price. And a good example is, of course, gasoline. Now, when gasoline prices go up, people buy almost just as much gas as when it's relatively cheaper. And the demand function of this consumption is called inelastic. So no matter how expensive gasoline is, the demand for it is the same. For other goods, such as eggs, we know that when egg prices increase, then people buy less of it. This demand function we call inelastic, and this demand function is elastic. Now, of course, the reason why this is inelastic is that there's no alternative to gasoline. Not yet. And the reason why this is elastic is, of course, well, if eggs are too expensive, then the consumer switches over to other goods. The principle we use in our work is that we ask animals to pay a price, not in dollars and cents, but in terms of work labor. And this is an example of one of our research projects. The price the pig has to pay is to press a panel. And on some days, it has to pay a low price. It only has to press a few times, a couple of times. On other days of this research, the price is high, and it has to press this panel up to 30 or 60 times in order to get a reward. In this experiment, the reward consists of the box that the pig is standing in. It simply moves on wheels to the side over the neighbor area, and in this neighbor area there's straw bedding, and pigs love to get into straw. They love to get in, and like this pig, to lay down in it. And before they lay down, they have a big series of they root in the straw, they eat the straw, so they really love straw. They're allowed to be in the straw for about 20 minutes, and after 20 minutes the cage drives back, and it forces the pig to leave the straw area, and if the pig wants to get back into the straw, it again has to pay the price, whether it's a low price or a high price. This principle of the test we use to test the demand or the motivation for the animals to work for various things. We have tested their demand for food, and of course pigs are willing to pay a very high price for food, especially if that's the only way they can get food. And the demand function for food is therefore very inelastic. If they have to work for various bedding materials such as straw or wood shavings or sawdust or sand, they are not quite as willing to pay as much. So the demand for these bedding materials is somewhat less. If they only have if they are kept in individual housing, so to say, and only get the chance to open a door to sniff a little bit to a neighbor pig for a few seconds, then their demand for that is not very strong. If I'm sure if we tested the demand for full social contact, it would be much higher, somewhere up, probably around here. And as we all know, moving around, locomotion, that's not very attractive to pigs. Very elastic curve. One of my students did use this principle in calves. She wanted to measure the demand for social contact in calves. And what she did was she trained a calf to push, some calves, to push a panel, and when it pushed it the right amount, paid the right price, then a door would open and the calf would be able to go into the neighbor room where what was one of its social companions, another calf that it knew. That was one part of the experiment. In another part of the experiment, the calf could do the same kind of work and get into the same room, but this time the calf was kept in a neighbor room, so there was a partition between the two calves. And what she found was that if the calf works for full social contact, then there's you can't see a very big difference, but it's there. They're willing to work significantly harder than if they only have head contact over or through a fence. We tried to use the same method in horses. I had used my own horse to do some pilot studies to see if they could learn, if they were as smart as pigs, and guess what? They are. To learn to press a panel, and this horse here is pressing a panel, and the reward consists of the door lowering so she can get down to the hay and eat some of the hay. We also tested the social demand for the demand for social contact in riding school horses. I had a couple of students help me do this experiment because it couldn't be automated. So, in order to get cheap labor, you hire some students to do the dirty work. And this horse had been pressing the lever here. You saw the red lamp blink every time it was counted. And when it's pressed the required number, then the door here was opened so that the pony could go in. And in the neighbor room, one part of the experiment, there was its social companion, its friend. We knew that these two horses were or the horses that worked together, that they were social companions. And they could spend about 4 minutes in this area. Not every time did they do this grooming behavior, but at least they like to be close to each other. In the other half of the experiment, of course, the social companion was kept in the neighbor area here, and they could only have a very limited contact, nose-to-nose contact through a fence. Now, after 4 minutes, then another student the student again would come in and take the test horse out, and if it wanted to get back into and have more contact with the other horse, well, then again it would have to pay the price in terms of doing this work. Now, these horses, as I said, they were riding school horses, so they were used to being away from other horses, and so the experiment didn't show any consistent need for social contact. In fact, one of the horses, all she did every day we tested her was she would press the required work for one reward period for 4 minutes, and then she would get in and see, oh, the other horse is there, or the other horse is in the neighbor area. And after she had done that, she wouldn't work anymore that day, because she knew, oh, the horse is in there, so I don't have to work. Another horse got in when got into the social partner, got kicked. Well, that's not a very friendly way of meeting anybody, so she also stopped working for the rest of the experiment. So because of these irregularities, we were not able to show that there was a strong need for social contact. But we know, as I said, we know that from other studies. What do they need social contact for? Well, they like to groom each other. They like to, at least when they're young, they like to play with each other. But in most cases, what you see is they just stand near their preferred social partner, as they call it in California, their significant other. They may just stand and graze near each other, or lay down and rest near each other. They don't have to touch each other. It's not all horses that show allo-grooming, but just that being near each other, that's important for you. You can see that if you, we have done some studies where, for instance, every 10 minutes throughout the field, the day, if you register where the horses are, they of course they may move around, but at least they often stay near each other if you have this kind of relationship. Usually I talk about friends, they have a friendship, but if you're a scientist, you're not allowed to do that. So anyway, it's nice to be near your friend. They don't have possibility for grooming behavior, this allo-grooming or grooming each other, and that is probably not very good, because of course it's nice to be groomed in order to, if something is scratching, is itching you, it's nice to be scratched, especially in those places that you cannot reach. But as we have already heard, the rubbing, especially on the lower part of the neck and the shoulder, it has a calming effect on the horse. It lowers the heart rate. And there's no doubt about that. It strengthens the bonding between the two individuals. And whether it's 1, 2, or 3, or probably it's all of the 4, we don't know. But these are the possibilities why allo-grooming is so important. If you notice these two horses, that's from a student project. And the student didn't have that good of a camera, but you can certainly see it. If you notice, it's extremely difficult to see the communication that goes on between these two horses. Why did they start it? Why did they just of a sudden switch over? But somehow the one horse is sending some signal to the other horse that, oh, it's time to scratch each other's back. No, not on that side, let's do it on the other side. And that's a good example of how subtle the communication, social communication in horses is. We have a problem with not only getting the horses out on pasture, but we have a problem getting them out there without a blanket. And what effect that has on their grooming behavior. I mentioned before that you don't often see that allo-grooming. It's not all horses that do it. Well, maybe it's related to the fact that if they always wear a cover, a blanket, then maybe that's why they don't scratch each other, because as you can see, where they prefer to scratch each other, groom each other, that's right where the blanket normally is. I think it would be like taking a shower with a raincoat on it. This picture is not constructed. I was driving along, actually on the way out to go out riding, and came by this pasture here, very little area, no grass, only sand. It was in the early summer. It was 22 degrees in the shade here, and still this horse was let out with a cover on. Now, why did the owner of this horse put it out with a blanket on? Was that to protect the horse from, I don't know what, sun rays, or was it for the welfare of the rider? Because many horses, especially when they get out on dry sand like that, they roll in it. It's wonderful, they like that, especially if there's a lot of insects. If it's muddy, then they also like to roll in it. And if you want to go out and ride on such a horse, it's a lot of work to get enough dirt off, at least where the saddle is going to lay, before you can go out ride. So I think that a lot of the times when people put a blanket on a horse, it's not for the horse's sake, it's for their own sake. And that's not all right. I showed this earlier, the study from the two vet students, that most of the horses had blankets on pasture, and 70% of them all, they had some kind of lesion from these blankets. Maybe it was only the hairs that were worn off, but in some cases they actually also had wounds from the blanket. So yeah, another reason why you shouldn't have used blankets. Now watch this gelding here. He has been let out on a sandy area. Horses may roll especially if they're wet. They like to roll in dry sand. I had a horse once that I could predict every time she wanted to roll. If she was wet, either from rain or from sweat, then she would roll immediately when she came out on pasture. Now watch it. Ah, not yet. That's taking good time. Ah, needs the head too. Yeah, one more time. And then now. Whoop. I think he liked it. But what's the effect of wearing these blankets on the rolling behavior, on mutual grooming? Well, I don't know if anybody has ever looked at that. And I bet, I'm willing to bet on that these kind of behaviors are significantly reduced when the horses wear blankets. So let's get them out on pasture, but not with the blankets on. A few more reasons why it's important that horses come outside, out of the individual housing. And this next one, the poor air quality, that may not be directly related to individual housing. But it's amazing how many riding horses have some kind of respiratory problem. In some populations, up to 80% has been recorded. I think we all know horses that start coughing if you come with dusty hay or whatever. And there are a number of diseases related to poor air quality. Unphysiologic pattern of locomotion when you keep them in an individual box all the time. These are the results, a very old study of a student in Germany who looked at how much, for how long time horses in individual housing is moving around. And what he came up with was that only for 41 minutes every day, and not even every day of the week, only 6 days of the week did they move around. And that's not very much. So the lack of locomotion is also a problem. Then there's one of the diseases that I think have been recorded to up to the highest percentage. That is the presence of stomach ulcers. And because in some populations up to 100% of the horses have some degree of stomach ulcer. Now, there are many reasons for getting a stomach ulcer. We know that from human medicine. It can be related to the feed, can be caused by bacteria, but stress, and it's particularly one aspect of stress, is related to stomach ulcers, and that is lack of control of your environment. And when you think of it, if horses are kept in individual housing, then they have not many possibilities. They can't go someplace else to lay down or over to some other horses or whatever. And this aspect is, I think, very important for for the development of stomach ulcers, and that's probably why we have such a high frequency of stomach ulcers. So, a few suggestions for improvement. Now, it's not enough to let out a horse if you let it out alone. As you see here, well, there are two horses here, but a lot of these horses are kept in their own pasture. That's not good enough. It's good that they get out, but they should get out together. But as I showed earlier, that it's it's a big problem. Many horse owners are afraid that their horse is going to get killed, and one of the get kicked. One of the reasons is that if a horse always has been kept in individual housing, then it is not socialized sufficiently on other horses. This is again the conic horses, and that's a young foal trying to interact with one of the adult stallions. In the book that I mentioned before by Joel Berger, he mentions how much time that the stallions spent with especially the male foals and especially with his own sons. So this interaction is very important in terms of the development of the social behavior of the young animals. Social behavior, social communication is not innate. It's not something that is given from birth on. That's something that has to be learned. And that's an aspect that we need to take care of. Environmental enrichment, those of you who are familiar with zoological gardens will know what that means. But that's something that is also important for horses kept outside. You can enrich the environment in many ways, either by using different types of hay or other kinds of feed. You can give them an area with some dry soil, some trees or branches or something else to chew on, and not just a lick stone. There's an interesting new kind of housing or paddock system rather that's being developed. It goes under the name Paddock Paradise. It's a man from California who has kind of developed that after having watched wild mustangs out in nature. And what he suggests is that you create a system of trails like this by fencing in areas. So the biggest part of the field he keeps closed off from the horses for hay production. And then in this labyrinth or the trail system, he puts food different places and water in different places, and that's in order to stimulate the horse to move around. And if you have, for instance, some stretches where they have to walk on stones, or some stretches where they have to learn to balance over difficult terrain, then that's good for the development, especially for the development of the hooves. And of course these horses go without shoes on, but because some of the stretches are rock or similar to rock, then that strengthens the hooves. So if you want to check out more of the principle behind this system, you can go in on the internet and look at that there. There's one thing about alternative housing, some kind of group housing. what we don't know about, and that's the financial aspects. But I would guess that a group housing system is cheaper to build than a conventional housing system. I don't know if that's true. I wish some economists would look into that. But it's always good if you can find a cheaper solution to something. You might have more people consider it. But there's one problem with group housing, and that's related to the thing I mentioned earlier, people's fear of having to go into a group of horses. You need much better management skills to make a group housing system function. It's much easier to put horses in each individual box stall, but if you want to take them out and put them together, you need to have much better understanding of horse behavior, and not only horse behavior in general, but you also need to have much more knowledge of individual horses. So, to conclude, I have to speed up here towards the end. We need to show horse people, that it's unhealthy for horses to be kept in individual housing. And we also need to find out much more about the socialization, what happens during the socialization of the young, especially the young horses, and how we teach horses to solve conflicts. Yeah, the last conclusion I didn't have time to get into. Thank you for your attention.